Brother, social isolation get a little bit addictive. Like I completely agree, right? Like it's like you shed the outer shell of social conditioning and you kind of run away into yourself, but then you lose how to communicate with another human being, right? So you kind of you become more human in a way, but less human in a lot of ways, and that's scary.
Yeah, I think it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of not realizing that you're becoming more and more antisocial, feeling better and better and better. But at one point, I venture a guess because I've never been there. I'm not sure, but I think at one point you hit bottom, and it must be like really hard to climb back out because let's face it, when what's hard of social interactions is you always think deep down that you're right and everyone else is wrong, like and so you try to convince people and you try to like compromise or do whatever you want, but like deep down most of people have a hard time to like accept that their reality is their reality and everyone else is a different reality. And so if you really go deep down in your reality and that becomes the entire world, I think it's going to become extremely hard to get out of that and to like re climb out of,
Mm.
oh wait a second, some other people might be right in their own way, like I'm not
Yeah.
the only one who's right.
It's funny that we started in this conversation, mate. It's one of the reasons why I called this thing the nomadic podcast, right? Like, because that's what I would do. Like when I'd kind of get sick of the world and sick of myself, like I would kind of dot off on my own, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, or whatever, one way ticket, drive, whatever I do. And I think you end up getting sick of yourself. And I don't know how long it takes. And sometimes it takes me an afternoon, sometimes it takes me 3 days, sometimes it takes a little longer, right? But you inevitably see what you've become, and you're like, oh, that's not good. Like, I'm a little bit too stuck in my ways, or we're like, oh, why aren't they coming to the conclusion I'm coming to? It's like you're mentioning, everybody is in the reality that they perceive. They have a different perception. They're in their own bubble. Like not everybody can join you in your bubble, and it's I think we need to address those things with ourselves. And a little bit of a caveat, what better way to do that with a little bit of barbells and burpees?
Yes, because there you're truly alone to finish the task.
And it sucks, right? It's fucking shit. It hurts.
But maybe that's why we like training, right? Because maybe that's why we get drawn to like these challenges of like you're gonna need to face it on your own. Maybe because they are some people that know how to be alone and then come back to society. Like I mean, a good like monk or a real, I'm going to use the term guru. Like it doesn't have like a good terminology for us down east, but like in India, like that would be like the person you would go to like help you with your life and all this. And they traditionally live alone, meditate for weeks, but then they're capable of like then talking. So I think it's just like a skill that we need to learn because when we get sick of ourselves, I think it's very similar that in training when we get faced with our true level, and some people react both ways. Some people get fired up because they're like, oh wow, this workout kicked my ass and like I want to do better. And some other people get mad because they don't want to accept, right? They don't want to accept like that's their level.
Yeah.
So they're gonna go do something else. And I think when we get alone, that's probably something similar. At one point, we get sick of ourselves. I don't know, but we definitely get sick of something. But is it sick of our past, sick of like being stuck in a way, sick of I don't know. But it's similar to like in training, right? Like you've seen these people with amazing capacity not going further because they don't want to accept that on the continuum, like they're at the bottom there. They're
Mm.
really good at that bottom, but they're not there yet. And they don't want to see the gap. They would want to be there right away or consider there right away. Or so maybe it's similar.
It's patience, man. Months and years, right? one of the first pieces of advice I got when I got into the shit, they said months and years. That's all he said. Months and years. Three words. And you're like, the fuck are you talking about, mate? Like I'm asking you a question. Months and years. Months and years, months and years. And I thought about it for what, fucking 13 years, right? And I'm like, I tell you what, yeah, sometimes you got to meditate on it. Sometimes you got to think about it. Sometimes you got to strip it back down so we understand the foundation and the core, right? And I think to some extent, everybody is able to do that when they walk into a gym, whether they do 20 minutes on a bloody elliptical machine, right? Or whether they do an absolute beaster of a workout and Kalsu or Fran or whenever the bloody crazy ones. They've done something, but they've able to dissect it, find a mental challenge, because we're all going to face them, whether it's going unbroken or whether it's you trying to kick an addiction. It's all the same. It's all a mental challenge, like for you and you, the person staring back at you in the mirror, and then you're going to overcome that. And I think it's highlighted to me the importance of, we throw it around all the time, the C word, the community, right? But the importance of the social interaction, because you feel like, well, if I gain all this knowledge, like retreating back into my hole, and like that's going to be the spot for me. But you lose so much. Like it needs to be both. You need to have this thinking hat on and understand who you are. But you also need to be around people because they're going to teach you so much.
And maybe because we're not as unique as we think, like maybe we're just built to be interacting, like a little bit like if we take the analogy of humanity being like a huge human, and each of one of us are like, cells inside that body. It's very likely if you take your own body that like the cells in your teeth have no idea what the heck your heart is doing, right? Or that even your heart exists. But if your heart stops, then even the teeth are going to fall off at one point. Like, and so I think that's what you're describing is like, whether we like in our society, we like to say, I became fit on my own terms. Like, it's me. It's because of my discipline. It's because of all this. I agree. Sure, that's part of it. But you did it because some people farmed the food that you're eating. You did it because someone at one point, like, introduced you to maybe CrossFit or your training regimen. Maybe someone helped you with the technique so you can actually get it. So now you have the illusion you're doing all this alone. But, someone built the car you used to be able to like go to the gym or drove you there. Someone built the warehouse where the gym is in. Someone built the equipment that you're using, right? So all these interactions, we're taught to like not see them, especially in the world of sports, because when you see the champion, you see only the champion. You don't see the thousands of people that like interacted with that person. You don't see someone winning the CrossFit Games and saying, I want to thank the Uber driver that brought me from my house to the airport. But if you didn't, then you wouldn't be there to win. Like
that's why I think it's really important that Fraser did what he did when he kind of hung up his boots. Because there's a little bit of air of mystery around him during the time that he was competing, right? But then when he hung up his boots, he turned around and said, no. I was able to do that because, first of all, the support from my mom and dad. And then second of all, buddy Sammy cooking all the time.
Yeah.
And people just kind of turned around and was like, what? Like you did X amount of workouts a day. Like, and he's just like, no. Like it's all the other stuff that he ended up neglecting, right? And I think he said something that was really profound. He said, paraphrasing, of course, but something along the lines of he's no longer willing to kind of sacrifice life for competition. And I think that's a really, really important thing for folks to know, because like even in, let's say, conventional sports, football, European football or American football or lacrosse, netball, rugby, whatever it is, right? It was like, yeah, you're going to have to make some trades. You're going to have to make some sacrifices if you want to go play pro sport. That's going to be the thing. Like, there's enough people trying to take that jersey off your shoulders. and that's the way it is if you want to do it. But then it's the caveat out of it. It's like, well, then you need to pass it on to the next person to see if they can do a better job. And then how do you then become more human? How do you integrate back into society? And it's all those questions that us as coaches get to have and try to answer, I guess. But I think the wisdom is trying to answer, not
Yeah,
arriving at the answer.
asking yourself a question and not necessarily judging, because I mean we can turn it the other way around. It's pretty easy, not pretty easy, but it's easier to say, I don't want to sacrifice life anymore, and I want to enjoy the couple of millions I made by sacrificing life a little bit, right? I mean, in especially if we take pro sports like football, right? It's a bit easier for Messi to say like, oh, now I want to take care of my family. I don't need, right? Like then someone who's like 16 or 17-year-old that is at the time in their life where if they want to, they probably should be a little bit narrow-minded and like go all in
Yeah.
with their goals, right? So maybe same thing to go back to what we were saying with like being part of society. Maybe we're like the insects, like the bees, we have like different moments in our life. Like, you start like as a whatever, they grab the flowers pollen, and then you become a guard, and then you become like whatever, but like you have like different and it's not because you and I are at a specific moment in our life that like everyone needs to be at that specific moment either. Right? I don't think it's mistakes to be a bit like narrow-minded for a while in your life in order to achieve something, and then to be able to leverage that in order to enjoy more life, right? I don't think it was a mistake for Fraser to be narrow-minded for like the 5 championships that he won, plus the 7 where he came second.
I completely agree.
And yeah, I think that allows him now to enjoy being wider focused, right?
I completely agree, mate. And in each hat that you wear, each focus that you have, you're gonna learn something about yourself and the world and other people. Like you're gonna develop this character. You're gonna live life. Like I've had the absolute honor and privilege in coaching a couple of like youths, right? Quite a few youths, and quite a lot of them were from a bit more of a deprived area. I said, all right, well, you got 3 options. First of all, you can make it out from academics, right? That's probably not going to happen. Let's be honest, because you're in this room. So let's punt that to the side of the room. Cool. Second one, you can make it out through sport. That's fucking hard. That is top 1%, less than. And third of all, you can make it out by grinding your frigging nuts to a fine powder and working every hour that you got in the day. Each one of those is a focused kind of between 2 fine lines. You've got to go forward. You can't be looking around. It's not socializing on the street. It's not getting up to mischief. It's like, no. You live in that environment. You got to get out. You need a focused, I got to get out. I got to chase this light at the end of the tunnel. And, then you might contact them 10 years later, 5 years later. You might have these conversations with folks that have already done it and you weren't around while they were doing it. And now they need to broaden that mindset. They got to open it up. So it happens on all ends of the spectrum. Someone trying to get out of a council estate or someone trying to go professional sport. It's the same, and I think we need those focus. I think we do. It's okay to say, hey, I'm going to take 5 years out, and I'm going to go pursue whatever, right? Or I'm going to take 6 months and I go on a sabbatical and go traveling and try and learn some new perspectives. Like that, it's okay. It's healthy. It's a life. The books don't have 1 chapters. That's a coloring book.
That's true. They do not have 1 chapter. So you need many. You need to embrace it.
What is the biggest
thing? And sometimes there's commonality between all these chapters. Like for me, sports has been a commonality through all the chapters, right?
Why?
Well, because I think that just like you said, there's many ways to fulfill the quest that that you're here to do. And there's some people that will do it with, bringing something to society that no one else brought. Like maybe, like SpaceX might be, with Elon Musk might be like bringing like space travel to society, right? Okay, so that's one way to like, bring it. For some other people, it's going to be through like, their family. For some other people, it's going to be through, inspiring people and all this. And I think that for me, I found that like it wasn't necessarily going to be through like being the best at something or trying to like change other people. It was going to be just by voluntarily putting myself through hard stuff. And there is a huge difference between being forced to do hard stuff versus voluntarily doing it. Like for example, if you were talking about CrossFit and saying, Fran, if you're forced to do Fran because we have this complex way to like hook up the barbell and like your body to like a machine to like make it work, for example, if you're forced to do Fran, you're never going to have the same power output as if you actually do it voluntarily. And it's the same thing. If you're hooked up to a boat and chained to the oars because you need to like row because you're a slave, you're never going to put the same output as if you're on your country's team, like trying to row for the Olympics. Mm. And so I think that you can learning how to do hard things it doesn't need to be the only way, but can be a way where you feel alive and start to like ask yourself the right questions. So that's why I've always done like relatively tough sports where you ask yourself questions, just because in my way, that's a good way to fulfill that. That's why CrossFit is not easy. That's why.
What are those questions you ask yourself when you do hard things?
Well, when you do hard things, the first question is going to be like, how far can I go? Like the second question is like, why can't it get easier? Right.
Yeah.
And and then usually you're going to ask why, right? If you're a pro athlete, like at one point I was lucky enough to like be on Canada like sailing team. So like let's say you sail for your country, or you play football for your country, or you play hockey, or you go to the CrossFit Games. Like you can then start to ask yourself the question of like, what's the purpose of having sports people? Like, why do we make it a big deal? Why like sport is only for fun when you're a kid, but then if you're an actual pro, like you make it way more than decent living. So why does society still puts a premium on sports athletes the same way as we do on music, and even more than we put on doctors or like accountants or like anyone else that would be at the top of their field? Mm. I don't have the answer, but you definitely ask yourself. So then hopefully that helps you to figure out like the value in it. And the value in it to me is just that you learn that you can fulfill yourself by doing hard things. It doesn't need to be rainbow and unicorns and easy stuff. That then allows you to like tackle hard things in your life very easy, much easier. It's never easy, sorry, but much easier. And I think that's what CrossFit does for most of people's mental health. You go in, you want to remove the bye-bye fat, right? People are like, hey, when I go like this, it wiggles. I don't like it. Like, so it's totally, we could say the wrong reason, but it's still their reason, right? They come in for that. And then they stay because they want to get their first double under, because they want to learn how to conquer the fear of like going on their hands, or they saw a muscle up and they're like, one day I'll do it, or they want to get a bodyweight snatch, or regardless, they stay for performance, and they now stay for something that is very painful, but that they voluntarily like try to achieve. And so when shit is painful in their life, they're like, wait a second, I can decide to voluntarily like go through this instead of suffering from it. Right. I think that's one part of why CrossFit's communities are so strong, because they're not the only sport community in the world. Like I've been part of other communities, but like why
Yeah.
they're very really really strong is usually that mindset was only seen in top end pro athletes. You didn't see this with a recreational tennis player,
Mm.
but you see this with a recreational CrossFitter.
It's that shift in mindset, right? And they choose not to be a victim. It's like
Mm-hmm.
this is happening to me. That it's thrown around too much, I think. Um, this stress is happening to me. This always happens to me, like whatever the fuck it is, right? But you're choosing to walk through the gym. You're choosing to walk through those doors, and okay, well it's this, and oh yeah, coach is making me do it. All right, yeah, you can tell yourself that, but once you finish, like you've got this sense of pride. You tell you what, like I might have only done one round. I might not even have done one round, but I got through that. Okay, cool, mate. What can I do next time? You're proving the competency of yourself and then also the community together, right? And I think that's also another beautiful thing about why the Open is so potent, right? Is like usually people make a big deal out of it, and you get your mates around, and everybody like earn your beers is thrown around, so you push a little bit harder, right? And you feel that sense of camaraderie. You feel that sense of, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to choose to do this, and I'm going to choose to kick it in the nuts. I'm going to go as hard as I can, and I'm going to see what happens. And you get people getting their first pull up or a double under muscle up or just going hard, and they're like, I cannot replicate that outside of this place. He's like, yeah, you can't replicate like the Stanley Cup playing bloody Sunday league. It's not going to happen. You're not going to have the amount of adrenaline pumping through your veins. There's not as much on the line. Like that's the point. You have now proven to yourself the peak output, the top end, and now you wonder, okay, well, how wide can we make this? Like, what is the intersection? Like, what can I do? What can I achieve? And it only ever bleeds off into life, right? Like we I say this all the time of like we teach life through the medium of fitness. That's kind of it. When hard shit happens, what are you gonna do? You're gonna cry. You're allowed to cry, but you gotta get through it. Like you can ask for help. That's also good, but you're gonna get through it. Like we can't just like sit down and be like, oh well, I'm not playing anymore. It's like that's not happening, man. That's life. It's gonna keep going. And fitness,
Yeah.
movement, sport. Fuck, I love this stuff, man.
Also, because I think in CrossFit there is one very important component is that usually was only seen in pro sports or higher level sports. The standard is really high. Like when you come
Yeah.
in, you watch, even if you're a good athlete, you watch the average Joe like at the gym, and they're doing things that you can't do. And most of the people get kicked in the teeth by that because they're like, hey, I'm considered, a good athlete, or I'm considered a high performer. I'm not used to like be subpar. I'm like, well,
Mm.
guess what? You're subpar. And that's the first realization that you need to have if you want to like be, among the 1% or like go up. And I think we do a very good job at CrossFit to bring that to the masses. Like in a nice way, you can tell someone who's completely out of shape but has success in other areas of their life, hey, listen, like in fitness, you're subpar. And then in a sense, at first they don't like it, but very soon that reignites the flame of like even in the success they have in their life, they realize like, oh, maybe I shouldn't just rest on that success. Like I can
Yeah.
still push it because there are people that are better. I think that's important. But for a lot of people, that's the first time they realize that putting a high goal, like getting your first pull up, might seem like impossible for some people. But putting that goal and not changing the workouts, okay, Thomas, like for you, don't worry, you're never going to get a pull up. So we're always just going to do ring rows, right? We don't say that in CrossFit. We're just like, hey, we're going to get you the strength to get your pull up. And then once you get it, a year in, 2 years in, 3 years in for some people, I think it's a breakthrough moments of like, oh, wait a second, high standards shouldn't demotivate me. They should show me the path. And like in life, we tend to, as a society, give participation medals, like, oh, everyone's a winner.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't evaluate, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. I get it. There are better ways for our school system and all this to function, but at the same time, don't forget that CrossFit got so big by just saying, we're still going to put your name on the board. You're not going to get RX because you didn't RX the workout. Like basically we're evaluating you, right? We're putting back everything that like at one point we fought with, it's demotivating and all this. No, it's not. If it's properly made, it shows you the path. It's demotivating if we say like, you didn't do it RX and you'll never be able to do it. But that's not what we say. We say you didn't do it RX today, but you got a bit closer, because instead of like putting your feet right underneath your rings, we move them 1 foot further. So you're getting stronger. It's good. We're on the right path.
Right? My missus said something one time. It goes something along the lines of standards make people feel seen. And I was like, I had to think about it for a while. It's just like a lot of people just kind of coast through life, especially in corporate, right? And they don't feel like they're seen. They're seen like they're just this ant in a colony. But if we hold folks to a standard, no, I want a 2-footed takeoff. No, I want your feet further forward. I want the bloody armpits facing forward, whatever the fuck it is. I want your hip crease below parallel. You're making them feel seen. And you're like, okay. Now we're putting individuality back into it. We're putting human back into humanity. It's powerful shit, mate. But I got 3 questions.
Yeah. What's that?
I got 3 questions.
Oh, cool. Shoot.
What's the greatest piece of life advice you've ever received?
I think as simple as, it's hard to translate. Let me translate it in my head, but it would go.
You say it in French if you want. Like I'll fall off every
word.
word.
Like that. It's good. Yeah, but like it doesn't. I'll say it. Like many things we say in French doesn't translate exactly. So basically, your brain is like a computer, and you're the programmer. So basically, just learn how to code your brain, so your brain then thinks and acts like the way you would like. Like if we unpack it a bit, it means that like most of the time we act on autopilot, right? When you wake up, like you're on autopilot. You don't think, am I going to put my right foot on the ground or my left foot on the ground? Like you don't, which is great, because if not, your mind would be like, exploding if you're thinking about. But very quickly, it's easy to coast through life, like you said, and be constantly on the autopilot and just wake up and be like, oh, where did the last 10 years go? Or like, why did I not, like, I've always wanted to like take a vacation there. It's been 10 years. I haven't done it, because you're on the autopilot. So you need to just, and the autopilot is basically that program. And you need to become the programmer that access that program and changes the pattern. And we can see this in sports very well, right? You and I are pretty efficient, like in CrossFit. So if we do burpees, we can actually just think about breathing, or we don't need to think about like, how am I going to go to the ground? How am I going to pop back up? So that autopilot is great for us. But if we want to improve our efficiency in burpees, then we need to then remove the autopilot and start programming and bringing our conscious back to, which foot do I put first? How do I step over the bar? And then now it's updated, and you let it go back into the autopilot. So like thinking that way, especially now that we have computers everywhere, I'm always asking myself, like, if I'm a computer, then the hardware short time, like my hardware is pretty much set. There's nothing I can do today that's going to instantly change the size of my legs. Like it will, act like it's going to take a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But there's something I can do right now that will change my squat because I can then load the latest update of the app squat, right? I can program the app squat. And it's the same thing in life, right? If you always get the same results, then you're probably running the same program. So don't start to just keep running the same program. Like learn how to remove the autopilot, reprogram it, and then enjoy the repercussion, the positive repercussion of that new program.
What's the saying in French?
Tu es ton propre programmeur, but the thing is you're your own program. Like it doesn't really work in English because programmeur for us really means programming for a computer, so you don't need to say the word computer. But that's why I was like, oh, I can't really say just in one sentence.
That's all right, man. Maybe next time I'll speak some French. I like languages, bro. I like even though I might be shit at it, I like languages, I like culture, teach me. How am I supposed to know? Teach me. But we only got 2 minutes, so I'll give you the last question. What are the 3 words you would tell your younger self?
Ooh. That's gonna be cliche, but it works with 3 words. Prove them wrong. Right? Because I was a skinny kid and all the time they told me that I should choose an endurance sport, which is why I did sailing. But it turns out I have a pretty good deadlift and back squat if I actually put my mind into it.
Fuck yeah. Those are the 2 movements everybody needs to do. That's all you need, man. Deadlift and the squat, man, every day. Well, not every day.
But... Maybe we add the snatch so we have a bit of mobility overhead.
Snatch and bench
press. That would
press.
Be a good question. If you would only be allowed to do one movement in your training for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Back squat.
Yeah?
Yeah. All day.
I might do overhead squat.
Oof.
Just for the mobility and strength of the upper body.
That's very true. I'd have to do a lot of.
But I agree that the systemic response of a back squat is going to be a lot bigger because of the absolute load we can lift. So you have a good point too.
Plus, it just brings me so much joy. Feeling something heavy that wants to break me in 2 on my back. I gotta sit it down and stand it up. Sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Brother, thank you so much, man. This has been an honor and a privilege. I have to get out to Montreal.